Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do one-stroke flowers. One-stroke flowers are done by mixing product on a brush and creating single strokes in a gradient like this. So I'm gonna be totally honest. I am still learning how to do this, but I really want to show you the basic process for how this is done. So, first of all, you are going to need gels that are specifically made for one stroke. So there is a company called Mosaic, who I get my gels from. They come in a package like this of 6, but you can also get them individually. At any given time, you don't need a lot of product because they are so pigmented. They're extremely pigmented so that you don't need to actually use very much at a time. So first of all, what you're going to do, let me show you what it's going to look like when you mix this product on the brush. So we've got a magenta here and we've got a yellow. We're going to start with the magenta and we're going to get magenta. So you see this brush? This brush is slanted. We're going to take the longer part of the brush and put it in the darker color. And then we're going to take the shorter part of the brush and put it in the lighter color. I just do a very gentle back and forth in this product to get both sides coated with the gel. Then what you do is, here, let me see if I can adjust my light so you can see a little bit better. There we go. As you can see, I practiced a little bit with buttercreams. The buttercreams aren't pigmented enough. So you take your brush and you start making strokes on your palette. You have to have a palette for this. And then you do the same thing with the other side of the brush. As you can see on this side, there's less yellow, so I'm going to grab more yellow. Yellow tends to be the go-to color because it is lighter, but also not completely white. So what we're going to do is create that blend on the brush by making strokes on the palette. And we're going to keep coming back to these. So when you draw one-stroke flowers, what you do is you start with the outermost petals first and then work inwards. So you take the toe of your brush, the longer part of your brush, you make a little line like that. I'm going to zoom you in for this part actually. So as you can see, I made a little line like right there. I'm actually going to make it pointier. I didn't make it pointier. Let me try again. Sorry, guys. You want the product to be pigmented, but also as thin on the brush as possible so you can be very precise. And so you take your toe of the brush and with it straight up and down, you make a line like that. Then that's your guide. So then a little bit down from the top of the line, you pull and then swoop. I know you've heard about me talk, I know you have heard me talk about pulling and swooping with curves. You're essentially making a little curve with your coated brush. We're going to do this again. See? I see some people doing this as well, where they make a second half of the petal. You don't have to do that every single time. In fact, the less perfect it looks, the better. I'm going to get some more product on the brush. When you see it start to thin out on the palette like that, that means you need more product on the brush. And you're going to go back in and you're going to create that blend. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. If you mix up the sides of the brush, you're going to have to start all over with the blending, and you're going to have to wipe your brush off and start over. All right, so we're going to create a line, and we are going to pull. And we're going to, here I'm going to switch around a little bit. We're going to start from here. We're going to pull. See how it stayed blended there? In fact, I'm even going to go on this one and pull. And we're going to go over to this side and we are going to pull. Now this takes some practice. It really does. So right now it looks pretty incomplete, but that's okay. We're going to cure it. We're only going to cure it for about 10 seconds. I got my finger in some gel, so I'm going to wipe that off. Sorry, I bumped the camera. All right, that was about 10 seconds. We're going to take the nail out of the curing lamp, and we're going to go back into our already blended product on the palette. You want to do this as often as you can. Ooh. Sometimes though, if you get a little bit of product on there in the wrong spot, it's not the end of the world. That actually kind of makes it look a little bit better sometimes. So we're going to go between these two petals and we're going to pull. Going to go between these two petals and we're going to pull. Okay. Now we're going to cure again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a smaller slanted brush like this. I already have product on it, but we're going to make another blend with that product on a different part of the palette. We're going to go like this. Needs more yellow. All right. Once again, the less perfect it looks, the better. You still have to be precise, don't get me wrong. But the less perfect it looks, the better. So yeah, we've got a nice blend going on this little brush. We're going to pull the nail out of the curing lamp again. We're going to take this smaller brush and we're going to repeat the process. Create those little petals in the middle. So right now it looks a little muddy, right? We're going to cure again. Wiping off the brush. They got a little bit too blended there, so I'm going to get more product on the brush. Oh, wrong side. So we got it on the toe of the brush. We got the pink on the toe of the brush. And then we're going to get the yellow on the heel of the brush. It may be that you need to actually get more product out, which I do. For this, I'm using the magenta. Here, let me actually get this in frame so you can see. So you don't need that much. These tubes are rather small. Okay. So we're going to get more product on the toe of the brush. Both sides. And then we're going to get more product on the heel of the brush. And we're going to mix on the palette again. See how much more vibrant that looks? That's what we want. That's how it's going to look when it's on the nail. So now we're going to take our brush, make these little center petals. Let me see if I can get that to focus. All right. We're going to cure that for 10 seconds again. I'm going to wipe off my brush because for now I'm done with it. Okay. Now we're going to take a fine brush like this and we're going to dip into some white. So now what we're going to do is we are going to define these petals a bit more so they don't look as muddy. Just trace around them and make them pointy. Okay. Maybe fix it up just a little bit. You want these lines to be pretty thin. All right. So as you're doing this, you are working outwards. When you reload the brush, make sure the product on the brush is as thin as possible. You want the brush to look as thin as you want your lines to be. Just like with calligraphy. So now we're going to define between these petals, but then when we are done with the part that is actually on the layers of the flower, we're going to go in with black for this particular situation because the background is white. I did a white background so you all could see just a little bit better. Anyway, here's our black. We're going to go in, make the product nice and thin on the brush, and we're going to trace around those petals, just like we did with the white. Thinner, in fact, because we don't want the black to take away from the rest of the flower. Man, I'm having a heck of a time getting this to focus, but I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing. All right. Here, I'm going to zoom out now. There we go. So now we've got some defined petals. Looks all right to me, though I am going to go back in with some black after we cure for maybe 10 more seconds. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Oh, that was a little dramatic. Anyway, now we're going to go back in with the black and follow the white to make it look a little bit more cohesive. And I just had a little part there that was hanging off the edge of the flower. You want the point to come off of the edge of the flower as well. That might be obvious, but I still think it's worth saying. So as you do this, I don't know if you can see this. It kind of goes black, white, on a single petal like that. That generates more interest and makes it look a little bit less, I don't know what the word is. I don't know. I think it looks better. I encourage you to do whatever you think is right. Anyway, now we have our flower. I'm going to flash cure this again. While that, I actually might give that a full cure. So while that's curing, I'm going to get out some green because we're going to do some leaves. We're going to flip the palette around one more time. We've still got all that yellow, so we're just going to continue using that. And I'm going to get out a little bit of green here. That green looks pretty dark on the palette, but it's not as dark as it looks on camera. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take that smaller slanted brush again that I just wiped off. We're going to repeat the process of blending on the palette. Toe in the green, heel in the yellow. So now we're going to blend that green and that yellow. Get a little bit more product. We want this to be dark, maybe not dark, saturated is the word I'm looking for. There we go. That looks a lot better. Okay, so now we're going to make some leaves. The leaves are really where you don't want to do as much with the symmetry. So, like we were doing before, we're going to point. Here, I'm going to flip this around. We're going to point and drag. You don't need very many leaves. Okay. I might do one more right here. Point, drag. All right. That looks pretty nice, right? So we're going to flash cure that. Going to put this brush down, pick up the fine brush again, And this time we're just going to do black. So we're going to dip back into the black. We're going to pull this out of the lamp. And now what we're going to do to define our leaves, there's a hair, get rid of the hair. We're going to define our leaves by doing a point at the tip of the leaf, dragging down next to it like so. Try and taper that line as much as you can. Then go back over to the other side of the tip and pull down again, just not as far. We're going to repeat that on all 4 leaves. Tip, define. I will say the Light Elegance buttercreams I have, the potted gels, do not work very well for one stroke, but their art gels do. Their art gels are pretty good for one stroke. They're much more viscous. They work pretty well for gradients in general. The buttercreams do, I mean. It's just that on this scale, they don't really. Okay. Those leaves are defined. And now we're going to draw off a few tiny little tendrils coming from the flower. You want to make sure your brush is nice and loaded for this part, but not so loaded that it leaves blobs. You can kind of freestyle these. I'm sure you've heard me mention in my other videos that if you do a curve, it's best not to do the entire curve in a single stroke, at least with line work. It's different with one stroke flowers, obviously. But with line work, you want to be very careful not to pull the entire curve in one stroke. You can have one kind of going off to the side. Have them branch off a bit from one another. When you're making these lines, it's good to start not right at the edge where you want it to intersect, but on the existing line and then pull off from there. So it looks, again, more cohesive. All right. So we have those lines now. I'm even going to have one coming off of the nail like so. There we go. So now, if you really want to, you can follow through this line that's on the leaf and have it come directly out of the flower. I kind of like the way that looks, so I'm going to do that with all of the leaves. Okay. So you see how there's a little blob there that wasn't perfectly aligned with the rest of the flower? I kind of like the way that looks because it gives the flower a little bit more interest, or the leaf a little bit more interest. So we're going to keep that. And then we're going to go ahead and connect the last leaf to the flower. Even if it's not quite touching, it still looks connected. Okay? There we go. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning that I think is important. When you do one-stroke flowers, especially with gels like this, you want to start off with a color and then a matte top coat, a good one that actually has grip to it. Because when you try to do this on a smooth surface, the color is going to thin out and it's not going to look as good. So see, I'm going to show you an example. This is a one-stroke flower that I tried to do with a potted gel, a couple of potted gels, on a matte top coat that wasn't as good as the one that I'm using for the nail we were just working on. As you can see, it's pretty sheared out. I had to really load the color on here in order to get what we were looking for there, and it looks very messy. So now we are more or less finished, and you can top coat this. Oh my God, the focus. I'm probably going to show you more one-stroke flowers in the future because this is a difficult thing to learn. And like I said, I'm still learning how to do this. But I showed you what I know so far. I will keep you posted. And thank you for watching.